I'm Jeb Butler, and this is Morgan Lindell. We're lawyers who work together at the Butler Law Firm. We want to talk today about a recent trial we had involving a defective firework. I think Morgan's going to get us started with the facts.
Yeah, so our client and his family were shooting off some fireworks on 4th of July, and our client's father put this Zing firework, comes in a package like this, down in the middle of the carport pad, a distance away from where our client was standing.
Not like in the carport.
Not like in the carport, but a little bit further back, and lit it. And rather than this shooting up and then kind of dispersing, it shot sideways. And unfortunately, it shot sideways towards our client where he was standing probably 35, 40 feet away, a good distance. But obviously when a projectile comes at you, it comes at you fast. This then hit our client in the eye, the left eye to be precise, and he was rushed to the hospital by his wife, and unfortunately later lost that left eye. It took about 8 months for them to decide to remove the eye, so he suffered for 8 months with basically an eye that was not functional, but was still there, and then ultimately had that eye removed, and is still having some effects and will have some effects for the rest of his life. So I think Jeb's going to tell you a little bit more about these fireworks.
Yeah. So we did some research into the firework. It is a, though you can't really see the package from that far away, maybe you can, but the model, for lack of a better term, of the firework is Zing, with a couple exclamation points, and it's made under the brand of Kingbird. So there's a circular logo that we'll see later on some images we'll show in the top right. It says Kingbird First Class Fireworks. Well, it turns out that Kingbird is just the marketing name for a Chinese company called Golden Peak Fireworks. Golden Peak Fireworks was started in China in the late 1980s, passed into new ownership, the founder's daughter actually, in 2007, and then right around that time they created this new brand, Kingbird, just to sell fireworks in the United States. So what we figured out was this was a defective firework manufactured in China and sold in the United States. So once we figured out who it was at fault, we filed a lawsuit on behalf of our client, and then Morgan will talk with us a little bit about what happened next.
Yeah, so as Jeb explained, we filed that lawsuit, and the way you file a lawsuit is you file what's called a complaint. And the defendants to the lawsuit have to file what's called an answer to that complaint. Essentially, it's saying what is and what isn't accurate on their accord in your complaint. So they have a certain amount of time to do that. And when they don't do that, they face some consequences. And namely, that is basically admitting everything that is in the complaint. So as Jeb said, we filed a lawsuit that alleged that these fireworks were defectively manufactured and just were defective overall. And that's what caused the firework to shoot sideways into our client's eye, ultimately causing him to lose the eye. So because they didn't answer the complaint on time, they went into default. But that didn't mean that we just won the case. They still put up a pretty vigorous defense almost up until trial. So for about 3.5 years, they defended the case and then decided to withdraw right at the eve of trial. And I think they tried to get out of default, which is basically having the court say, well, we know you didn't answer the complaint on time, but we're going to give you a second chance to do it anyway. They tried to do that 5 times and ultimately went up to the Court of Appeals, lost that, and then we came back down and had trial. So right before trial, their defense lawyers decided to file a motion to withdraw and got out of the case. We suspect because the defendant was probably doing some stuff that wasn't above board, but we don't really know. So we get to trial and nobody shows up on their side. It's an empty chair defendant, as we call it. The owner of the company didn't show up. They didn't have any lawyers. So we went through trial with basically nobody on the other side. And it looked like they didn't have a defense, but as I just explained, for 3.5 years they had a defense.
Right. So in terms of the defense lawyers pulling out, it was what we call in this profession noisy withdrawal. And so Morgan and I don't ever get to find out exactly what happened on the other side to make the lawyers say, I cannot even do this anymore. But it don't happen very often because defense lawyers get paid by the hour. So they're normally quite happy to sit there and work on whatever. But in this case, they had to get out. I suspect, and this is not a proven thing, I suspect what was happening is that the company saw this trial, this judgment coming down the road, and was attempting to transfer their assets from the United States to China, where we couldn't get to them, where our client could not get to them. I don't know that. That's a supposition. But anyway, we go to trial, and we have to put up evidence, even with the defense not there, and even with the case in default, we have to put up evidence that shows that our clients were hurt. So evidence of damages, and then evidence relating to things like attorney's fees and punitive damages as well. We have one picture from trial. Now, every time we do something like this, I will try to remember to take pictures so that we can talk about it later. But often we get really into what we're doing and forget. And that's what happened this time, except that one day my daughter came to watch me give the opening statement. And my wife took a picture, so we have one picture from our trial, and this is it. We're at a break in the trial, and the Superior Court of Whitfield County, and this is me and my daughter Farah, who was watching me in action for the first time. She's about to turn 5. Looking at my list of what we need to talk about. So, when you put up evidence at trial, that means you're calling witnesses to testify or putting in documents. And some of that evidence included our client and his wife. Now, both of them have claims, and actually we formally represent them both. Our sort of main client lost his left eye, but that affects his wife too, because while he's dealing with those injuries, he can't help around the house like he used to be able to. His ability to interact with his children is limited, and it's a strain on the family's finances because he went from being able to earn money and being a provider for his family to not being able to do that for a long, long time. Our client had worked in such an industry that he couldn't go, he was in a manufacturing facility, he couldn't go back to doing what he had done before. So because the injury affected his wife so much, she has a claim also called a claim for loss of consortium. We'll talk a little bit about that more later when we talk about the results of the trial. But our client testified, his wife testified, and then we also put in some evidence about the relationship between Kingbird, that is the American brand, and the real people who are controlling what happened, that is Golden Peak. And I'll go through some of that now. What we had was a marketing video, and I'm not going to show the whole thing now because it's too long, that was put forth by Golden Peak. And the video is all about, like, it's just a marketing piece. It's like how great Golden Peak is, how they've been making the best fireworks for the longest time. They have the highest production standards and all this sort of wonderful puff talk that you see in marketing videos. But they also had, when you look at it, you can see there's a caption underneath. So that was helpful in showing screenshots to the jury, which is what we did in opening statement before we showed the full video during the presentation of evidence. We'll go through just a few of those screenshots here. One of the things that we wanted to point out to the jury is that even if you look at this company's own marketing piece, like this is like the best light they could possibly portray themselves in. And even then, like this is what they're calling state-of-the-art manufacturing facilities. And it just doesn't seem to fit that description. Some other manufacturing photos included exhibit 5.6. So if we look here, like they're bragging at the bottom, you can see they're talking about this GB 10631-2013 standard of firework manufacturing, but the dude's using a toothbrush. So we thought that was unusual. We can look at plans exhibit 5.9. And you can see this is like not a super clean facility. This does not look like the state-of-the-art manufacturing that they claim to have.
And here, it looks like these are what they are.
That's really cool. I had not noticed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these probably are actually the Zing fireworks at issue. We looked a little bit about how the company sold fireworks. This is a picture that shows obviously our Zing fireworks in the back, and they say they're selling like hotcakes, which is an American idiom, by the way, showing that this was really designed for an American audience. You can see this is the Kingbird logo here in the background of this video made by Golden Peak. there's one part of the video where they talk expressly about marketing to the United States. Here's one where they have, I'm not sure how clean this display is, this is a map of the southern U.S. where Golden Peak sells a lot of fireworks. Texas, Louisiana. Yeah. And then, here's more evidence of who Kingbird really is. This slide is supposed to be someone in China walking into like the Chinese Chamber of Commerce for fireworks. You can see the Chinese characters, but then here in the back, that's the Kingbird logo. And if you wanted sort of more evidence that they're the same, I think you can see this without me zooming in. It says the Chinese characters, Golden Peak, and then that logo says Kingbird First Class Fireworks. I'll do a couple more exhibits more and then turn it back over to you. We talked about the damages to our clients and what he went through. There was a couple pictures of what that looked like. So this is our client's eye pretty soon after the injury. And then here's a close-up after surgery. I'll pull that down. And we had some other pictures, but I don't want to. I just want to show the close-up so you can't really see my client's face, just for his privacy's sake. So I've been talking a long time. Morgan, tell us about the medical evidence.
Yeah, so as Jeb indicated, we had our clients talk about their injuries, but also, importantly, we had the doctors that performed surgeries on our client talk about those surgeries and the treatment that our client went through. So we had two doctors, Dr. Y and Dr. N. Dr. Y was the first doctor that basically saw our client when he came into the emergency room. And Dr. Y performed the emergency surgery to, one, explore the eye to see if there was anything loose, any fragments in it, and then two, to close the laceration on the eyelid itself. So Dr. Y did that. He explained all that entire process and explained kind of the pain that our client was in when he got to the hospital. Well, fast forward, as I kind of told you, that didn't ultimately heal our client fully. He needed the eye removed, and Dr. N was the person who removed that eye. And so Dr. N, again, talked about that surgery in great detail and showed an evisceration spoon, which is actually what is used to scoop out the eye. They actually use a spoon to do that. Odd, but you'd never know that unless you had the testimony of the surgeon that performed the surgery. So she talked about that. Dr. Y talked about his surgery, and basically it just gave the jury 20-30 minutes from each doctor about the treatment and the technical stuff that our client went through. So.
Yeah, went through that and also talked about the real effect of the case. So. In my mind, the effects of becoming monocular, which means having just one eye, are basically, you can divide it into three buckets. And the first is you lose a lot of your peripheral vision. You lose about a quarter of it. So if you lose one eye, your other eye can kind of do double time, and I can still see like over to here or so. But the doctors testified that, yeah, you lose a quarter of your field of vision. So like, I couldn't see, if I had one eye, I couldn't see Morgan right now. But with two, I can see her out of the corner of my eye. And that has some effects, because if you're in a crowd, you bump into people you don't know, like you don't see them, and then that person you bump into, they don't know you very well. They're like, "What are you doing, you jerk? How could you not see me?" And you don't have time to tell everybody, "Oh, I'm sorry, I only have one eye." So it has these sort of social repercussions. Another is the ability, the depth perception. So all mammals who are in part predators, at least ancestrally, have eyes in the front of their head, like people do, and that's because you can triangulate on something and see how far ahead of you it is. But if you have only one eye, you lose that ability. And this will affect you in ways you kind of wouldn't expect, like pouring liquids becomes hard because you tend to get the depth wrong. Grabbing the handle of a cabinet. Coming downstairs is interesting. I had not thought about that until I had this case. But you lose a lot of depth perception, which in some ways affects driving, particularly at night. And then the third bucket of things, so it's field of view, depth perception. The third bucket is social. our client has to wear either a false eye that doesn't really move naturally, so people kind of pick up on it, or an eye patch all the time. And so he meets somebody, he always wonders, what do they think of me? Are they scared? Are they listening to what I'm saying? Or just wondering what happened to my eye? There's kids that, like his family knows, that are terrified of him for no reason other than he looks strange, and it's not their fault, they're kids, but it hurts you a little bit if kids run away from you screaming, just because of something that a firecracker took away from you. So anyway, we talked about that through the medical testimony, and then also through our clients. This is a trial, so we have to ask for money, and we did. We asked the jury to return, basically do three things. One, to return a verdict of $10 million for our principal client, to return a verdict of $500,000 for his wife, and to make Kingbird, that is the defendant, pay the attorney's fee, our attorney's fees, rather than having to come out of our client's pocket. So we asked for $10 million, $500,000, and the attorney's fees, and the jury did something pretty close to that. This is what we call a verdict form. I've removed our clients' names for their privacy. For our principal client, it was $9 million, which is $1 million less than we asked for. For his wife, he was $2 million, which is $1.5 million more. And then they did agree that Kingbird and not our clients should have to pay the attorney's fees. Now, that's not the end of the game. It continues because during the trial, after the verdict was announced, we learned that Kingbird had declared bankruptcy in Indiana. So along with lead counsel in the state, in this case, my friend Matt Stoddard, we can now go adventuring and see if we can get that bankruptcy thing overturned and collect some assets out. Suspect we will be able to, but the case continues. Thank you for watching.